Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you've been well. Today we're talking about the F-450, kind of Super Duties in general. You can take a lot of what I say about the Ford series and apply similarly to the Ram and the Chevy as well. And I'll kind of start in this video like why I got a 450, difference between a 450 and a 250 or 350 or 550, and then kind of shift to some more personal, like what I'm doing with the truck, why for me I went with the 450 instead of a 350. I'll try to keep the beginning a little more general and then the end of the video a little more personal. So for those of you that are fans of the channel or are interested in the build, the second half of the video will kind of dive a little deeper into that regard. So anyway, this is the 2019 F-450 with the 6.7 Power Stroke. This is actually an F-550 back here. So I have an F-450 and I have an F-550 as well. If you're new here, I got a bunch of vehicles. I build them out. I use them. I go on adventures. I live in the mountains of Colorado. Get subscribed. It's a fun channel. So recently I bought this truck and I sold my Tundra, my 2024 Toyota Tundra, which was dialed. It was a perfect build. It was incredible. I loved that truck, and I talked about in that video why I sold the Tundra and why I got the Super Duty. So for more of that take on it, you could watch that video. Since then, I've gotten a lot of questions, comments, messages, emails asking why people were kind of wanting to do a similar thing. And they're like, why'd you go for the 450 instead of the 250? Why'd you go for the dually instead of the single rear wheel? Why'd you go for the Power Stroke instead of the gasser? And oh dang, I must have picked a scab here and now I'm bleeding. So that's kind of, we're going to talk about a lot of that stuff. So let's start at the basics. So for people in the Ford world or Ram or Chevy, basically the F-150 is the equivalent to a 1500 Ram or Chevy, or equivalent to a Toyota Tundra. Now Toyota doesn't make HD trucks. So the 150s and the Tundras, those are all half-ton trucks. Then 250, 350, 450, 550 is kind of equivalent to Ram or Chevys. 2500, 3500, 4500, 5500. So in that line, in the Ford world, that's where I'll kind of stop talking about Rams and Chevys, because it's not apples to apples, but a lot of the stuff I'm talking about in the 250, 350, 450, you can apply it to Ram and Chevy as well. So anyway, F-250 up is, in Ford's world, the Super Duty truck. So in 250 up to 550 plus, they're available with the 7.3 liter Godzilla gas engine, V8 gas engine, or the 6.7 liter Power Stroke diesel, and another V8, I believe, as well. And then you can also get now the 6.7 Power Stroke diesel in a high output motor. So the engines are going to be largely the same. Oh, I got a mosquito here. Engines are going to be largely the same in the Power Stroke lines. This is going to bug me and it's going to annoy you. So hopefully I can swat this mosquito. So that is all the same, unless you get into the real quick note here, the 550s or the 450 chassis cab. That is a detuned motor at that point, and maybe I'll come back to that and talk about it a little bit later. Okay, so the 250, 350 up they look pretty much like the same truck. Like the headlights, the body, the doors, the interior, the beds, they're all the same, though the 250s and 350s, you can get more configurations. You can get the short bed, like the 6.5 foot bed or the 8 foot bed. You can get them in the dually. You can get them in the single rear wheel. You can get them with the Super Crew or the single cab or the extended cab. So there's a lot more configurations actually in the 250s and the 350s than there are in the 450s or the 550s. As you get bigger in number, you do kind of get heavier duty of truck, but you don't get bigger. Like the truck doesn't get any bigger. You can get this 8 foot bed Super Crew 250 or an 8 foot bed Super Crew 450, and the dimensions are going to be basically identical outside of the width of the front axle, which I'll get into more later. So the question I got was, why a 450 instead of a 350, and why a dually instead of a single rear wheel? So these are some good questions, and this is going to be depends. If you're looking and you're wanting to get one and you're like, what should I get? It It depends. A single rear wheel, a non-dually, is going to be a little narrower. The wheel options are going to be very vast. It's going to ride a little better. It's going to be a little better off-road in general, but you're going to have a lower payload, lower towing capacity, all of that stuff that comes with it, with a single rear wheel versus the dual rear wheel. But to keep things simple, there's a lot of suspension, there's a lot of aftermarket support, there's a lot of wheel tire combos, there's a lot of benefits to just going with a single rear wheel. And that arguably still might have been a better choice for me personally. Once you get up to a dually, you get wider. Some of your components do get beefed up. Your payload will go up, but even as in a dually configuration, you do have different options for payload as well. But typically dualies are going to haul better, they're going to tow better, they're just going to be like more beefed up work trucks. So again, 250 and 350 you can get in the single or the dual. In a 450, you can only get a dual rear wheel. So if you want to bump up to a 450, then a dual rear wheel is really the only option. And for the most part, this varies on year, and there are some custom configurations that are pretty super duper rare, and a 450 is even rare in and of itself versus a 250 and a 350 are plentiful. But a 450, really you're only pretty much for the most part going to find in a Super Crew with an 8-foot bed, again with a dual rear wheel. So if you want to bump up to a 450, that's basically what you're getting. Now, there is also a 550. Now, a 550 you can't get from the factory with a pickup bed. So a 450 is really the biggest, beefiest, baddest truck you can get that comes with a bed. A 550 is what is called chassis cab or a cabin chassis, which you can also get on a 450, and you can also get like on a 350 as well. But 550s only come with that. What that means is they have the cab and nothing on the back. So a 550 is a commercial truck designed to work. So it has nothing. You turn it into a bus or a tow truck or a dump truck or whatever you're gonna do. If you see a big work truck that has something on the back of it, a lot of times those are gonna be 550s. You can get a 450 in the same configuration as well. And if I remember, I will talk about the differences of that later. So back to kind of as it pertains to why a 450 versus a 350 versus a 250. All of these trucks are going to have different payload rating options that you can kind of spec them to. A 450 doesn't have a whole lot of variance, again, since it pretty much comes in this one configuration, whereas a 250 or 350 has a big variance. A 450 is going to be a heavier truck than a 350. Say you get an F-350, same configuration, Super Crew, 8-foot bed dually, but it's an F-350, it's going to be almost 1,000 pounds lighter. Like the truck itself is going to be almost 1,000 pounds lighter than a 450. And so you're like, where's that 1,000 pounds come from? Well, it comes from a wider axle, slightly beefed up suspension, and significantly bigger brakes. Now the frame on, at least for this generation of a 350 versus a 450, the frame is actually the same on the pickup version. The cab and chassis version is different though. So even on a 450, if you get a pickup versus a cab and chassis, your frame is going to be different. And then there's some other minor differences that don't play a whole lot, but there's a slightly longer frame and whatnot. And I think I mentioned it, but the wider axle, which also gives a tighter turning radius, which I'll talk more about in a bit. But basically, again, same configuration, 350 and 450. The thing that's kind of interesting is you can get a 350 with a GVWR of 14,000 pounds. An F-450 GVWR also 14,000 pounds. An F-550 or even a chassis cab 450 is higher than 14,000. An F-550 cab and chassis is typically 18,000 pounds. So 14,000 pounds bumped up to 18,000 pounds, but an F-350 is also 14,000 pounds, which seems weird. You're like, Mike, that truck that you just described has bigger brakes and beefed up suspension and a beefed up axle and like some beefed up components. Why is it only a GVWR of 14,000 pounds? Well, we don't really know, but we think it's for kind of insurance purposes or something, but basically the F-450 doesn't fall into the commercial truck category. So it's people kind of know the F-450 is the baddest truck, but it's not a commercial truck. And fall in that categorization, it had to fall under the 14,000 pound GVWR. So like I said earlier, 350, also 14,000 pound GVWR. The 350 is 1,000 pounds lighter. What that means is on paper, you can actually get a 350 with a higher payload capacity than a 450, even though the 450 is beefed up and can technically handle more weight. On paper, you can actually get a 350 that can handle more weight. So having said all of that, why would I want to go for a 450 when they're way more rare, there's not as many options, they have less payload capacity than certain F-350s? Why would you want to go for the 450? So I wanted to go for the 450 because I was going to put on huge tires. This is going on 40-inch super singles. So I'm converting the dual rear wheel to a single rear wheel, which again, people are like, why wouldn't you just get the single rear wheel then, Mike, you idiot? Good question, but I'll try and answer it later. The F-550 I've already converted, so these are 41-inch like military tires, super singled over there, and it increases off-road performance by a lot versus a dually, and it makes the truck kind of just drive better and smoother, but you retain all of those big, heavy-duty, thick, big axles, beefed up suspension components, beefed up brakes. So the 450, there were two main reasons that I would want to go, or you might want to go for the 450 versus a 350. And that is the wide track front axle means it has a much tighter turning radius. It actually has it's 8 feet less. I don't know if it's the radius or the diameter, but 8 foot less, either radius or diameter, turning diameter than an F-350. So same size truck, but it turns tighter. Cool. I will always take a tighter turning radius when available. The fender flares are a little bit bigger. The front, axle is a little wider. So there's some visual differences there you can see. And then the second reason for me anyway was the bigger brakes. You need to run a 20-inch. They come with 19.5-inch factory wheels, but you need to run a 19.5-inch or bigger. So people typically go for a 20-inch in order to even clear the brakes, whereas a F-350 or 250 comes with 17-inch wheels, so much smaller brakes. So you bump up to the 450 and you get a tighter turning radius, noticeable, significantly tighter turning radius, and you get significantly bigger brakes. So those two reasons alone is the main two reasons that I went for the 450 over a 350. Whew. Hopefully that was okay. It was a little longer winded than I intended it to be. So now we're going to go over where I talk a little more personal about my build and the choices I made and the reasoning behind them on a more personal level. But real quick, because I've been talking a lot, let me check again, because I filmed basically this whole video and my mic battery was dead and I didn't realize it. So I went back to watch it, and so I'm actually super parched. So today's sponsor, thank you to LMNT. LMNT is amazing. LMNT is a great hydration supplement. Electrolyte drink mix is what they call it. Stay salty. And it is summer and it is hot. You are hot. You are sweaty. You are losing minerals out of your body. So the summer flavor actually that LMNT has launched is lemonade salt. And out of all the flavors, this and raspberry might still be my favorite, but lemonade or raspberry are my favorite. Lemonade is limited, so if you like the lemonade, snag it now. You want to see truly the best thing about the Super Duties? This cup holder slides over here, and then you have 4 cup holders, 2 of which fit Nalgene's. So hydration is pretty important, and if you don't know, it actually takes more than water alone to hydrate you. There's actually a scientific, specific balance of minerals that actually is ideal, and that is what LMNT is all about. These little packages have that to perfection, and they taste good as well. And it's got no sugar, so it doesn't break a fast, keto-friendly, paleo-friendly, vegan-friendly, no weird ingredients, and it's got, it's not Brondo, but it's got everything the body needs. It's an Idiocracy quote for those that didn't catch it. And it's used, backed, and sworn by professional athletes, special forces dudes, Olympians, health nuts, moms, dads, regular Joe Schmoes like you and me. So if you'd like to try some, again, lemonade, delicious and limited time only, you can go to drinklmnt.com/LLOD. And every order, not just your first order, every order, they'll throw in an 8 sample pack for you. So every time you place an order, go through that link, drinklmnt.com/LLOD, and you basically get 8 for free every time. So if you want to check it out, if you want to stay hydrated, if you want to feel refreshed, give LMNT a try. And, you know, appreciate them for sponsoring this video. So yeah, back to the rest. And then one other thing, this doesn't really apply to me because I'm going to rip the factory stuff off, is a 450 with those 19.5-inch wheels is going to come with a more commercial tire. So it's going to be more capable of heavy loads. There's going to be less sidewall play. And what that means is it's a really stiff, really strong tire. So a 450, people say rides rougher than a 350 because it does. But people don't always understand that the reason that it rides rougher is not so much the suspension or anything else about the truck. It's really just that it has those super heavy duty commercial rated tires. One last thing I forgot to mention that I talked about later in the video, but I'm splicing it in now, is the gear ratio. So 6.7 diesels don't get the same gear ratio all around. 550s are typically 488s, I believe. 450 non-cab chassis are 430s. And then the 350s are actually 410s in the Power Stroke. And then in the gassers, I believe they're like 373 or something like that. So the 450, especially if you're running bigger tires like I'm gonna, it actually comes with a better gear ratio for that. Now, it's not as good. Again, you want a little more power. That's why the gearing is what it is, so it can tow a little bit better. But at higher speeds, you are sitting at a higher RPM. That's why a 450 will actually get slightly worse fuel economy than a 350. Largely, that's due to the different gearing. Like I said, if you're going to bigger tires, you want that better gearing. Okay, so a little more conversational now, I guess. We have the F-450 and the F-550. You could say I'm a Ford fanboy now, and I got the big trucks. And anytime now I'm driving in the 450 and I pull up next to a Tacoma, I make sure to roll down my window and say, hey, cute truck. No, not really. Small trucks are great, and the Tacoma will still be much better on the trails than the 450. So with the whole ethos of the truck, which I've talked about in other videos, I just wanted to build the baddest truck. Is this an end-of-the-world truck? Probably. This month I'm going to talk a lot about prepping and what's going on in the world. And this truck and the bus as well, both kind of have a little bit to do with that. But non-prepping related, again, I live in the mountains of Colorado, not wildly remote or anything, but I want to be able to pull someone out of a ditch. I want to be able to go off deep into the mountains and help recover someone. I want, if a school bus slides off in a winter storm and I'm right there and there's a bus full of little kids that need help, I want to be able to help them in this big bad truck. So the 450 is kind of the biggest, baddest truck you can get. So when I was talking earlier about single rear wheel versus dual rear wheel, dually versus singles, and how I'm got a dually, but I'm going to convert it to singles, this is very confusing for some people, which I do understand myself. So 450, the benefits, the brake, the turning radius, all that kind of stuff, only available in a dually. Now, if I could get a 450 in a single rear wheel, and it had all of those benefits of the 450, I might have done it, but I couldn't. So there is a way to convert a dual rear wheel to a single rear wheel. And that is called, it's referred to as super singles. So you get a special rear wheel, and I'll talk more about this when I do it on the 450. And I talked a little bit about it on the bus on the previous video. But it allows you to mount, it uses the same wheel in the front and the back, and it essentially flips it for the back, or flips it for the front, but basically it's reverse front and back, to where now you're tire track is the same in the front and the back. So if you're going in a straight line, your front tire is compacting the snow or whatever in the same path as the rear tire. That's good and important for off-road. So you get the benefit of now you're tracking true, which again happens by default on a single rear wheel, but you need the super singles on the dualies. And then it's a super heavy rated wheel. So each of these wheels are rated for like 7,000 pounds or whatever. So with the right tire, you really need a military tire to do that. You maintain your payload and your towing capacity as well. So if you do the super singles and your heavy duty tire and your heavy duty wheel and all that stuff, and you can maintain the same payload and towing and all that, yeah, it's cool that you can, but probably people aren't super singling their vehicles, their trucks like this, if the plan is to still try to maximize towing, because your towing is gonna be greatly affected by the bigger tires. So I personally am not towing, a 30,000 pound fifth wheel or excavation equipment or whatever on the regular, or maybe ever, I don't know. But I did want a truck that could handle it. But like I'm saying, once I put it on 40-inch tires, even though technically it could handle it on paper, it won't handle it as well once it's on the much bigger tires. But all of the beefed up components, the bigger brakes, the better gearing, all the stuff I talked about earlier, that is going to help with the bigger tires. It's going to help stop the bigger tires better. It's going to help the bigger tires turn better. It's going to help this thing drive better. And the bigger tires actually, with the 430 gear ratio, I could go even bigger. I could go, I think they do 677s or something, the gears sometimes they do for this. But I think the 430s with the 40-inch tires, and again, not trying to tow 30, 40,000 pounds, will be perfect. My highway RPMs will be lower. I'll get better fuel economy probably with the 40s than I do with these, honestly. And it'll ride better and it'll ride smoother, it'll be much more off-road capable, and that will be very cool. So earlier I talked about some differences between the 550s and the 450s, really the cab and chassis versus the pickup bed. And so some people also asked why I didn't do a 550. So a 550 is, or again, a 450 cab and chassis. They're kind of similar, the capabilities of a 450 cab and chassis versus a 550, but we'll just compare the 550 to the 450 pickup in that regard. So a 550 you can't get with a bed. So if I was gonna go and I was gonna flatbed it, then a 550 might be a better option. But I wasn't planning to flatbed it. I still have no real plans to flatbed it, especially because I have the bus. So I would only flatbed it to put some camper on it or something like that, unless I needed the flatbed for some work-related thing, which I don't. So the bus is really coming in where that flatbed with, a camper on top of it might have scratched some itch. The bus is scratching that itch. So I just wanted a regular pickup. So the 450 is really the only option, unless you do something like an elevation off-grid, which they basically customize a 450 bed to fit on the different frame of a 550. So a 550, the cab and chassis, the frame is actually a C-channel, and it is just straight back, whereas a 450 kind of takes some bends and junk on the pickup bed, and a 350 and a 250 is as well. The cab and chassis are just straight back, big beefed up C-channel. So the frame, even though they're fully boxed on these and they're C-channel on the 550s, it's a beefed up frame. But also it's just much easier to attach things to. The reason they did it is just flat, and C-channel is obviously easier to bolt stuff to than a fully boxed frame where you can't really get in there. So the C-channel is really designed to mount stuff to. It's designed to mount things to. So that means you can't actually just take a 450 bed and throw it right on a 550 without some custom modifications. I don't know exactly what's involved, but it's not super straightforward. But again, some companies do it. So if you ask me oh, Mike, why didn't you get an elevation off-grid truck? Well, because they're $200,000 or something. Whereas this one was $45,000, I think, and then I'm going to modify it. But it'll be well under $100,000 even versus a $200,000 elevation off-grid truck. Now, if I had the money, yeah, an elevation off-grid. What that is, if you don't know, it's an F-550 but it looks like an F-450, already super single. A lot of times they do liquid springs, and it's just a truly beefy, massive truck. Well, it's not any bigger really. But the other thing that is actually not as good, the one thing that's not as good about the 550 is, or the 450 cab and chassis, is it's a detuned truck. And as far as I've researched, it actually has smaller turbos as well. So smaller turbos and detuned, it makes significantly less power. And you're kind of like, why would they do that when it's a bigger truck that's rated for more? Why would they do it? It's not rated to tow more, I don't believe. It's just rated to have higher payload. So technically the 450 is still the beef supreme for towing. But the reason they detune those trucks is because, again, they're more for commercial. They're commercial-related trucks. So if you think of a commercial truck, a tow truck, or whatever, a bus, it's going to run a lot longer. The duty cycle is going to be long. They want to be able to run that truck 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if they need to. And the operators, it's not their own personal truck. They're not going to take care of it. They're not going to baby it. They're probably going to miss maintenance intervals more. They're going to redline it more. They're late for whatever. So going up this hill, rather than keeping all their temps where they should be, they're just going to floor it and go. So the detuned truck helps for life expectancy and wear and tear and all that stuff on a truck, but it means it's a slower truck. So a 550 is going to be a slower truck than a 450. Now, there are tunes and whatnot you can kind of do, but you're never really going to get apples to apples. A 550 is going to be a slower, weaker truck as far as power than a 450. So that's another reason you might want to opt for a 450 instead of a 550. So yeah, now get back to kind of the most personal aspect, I guess, is like this truck. And I'm going to outline the truck, and I was going to actually just throw all of this that I'm talking about into like a truck update, and I was like, no, because that's going to be too long of a video in and of itself. So beef truck, big brakes, heavy truck, tighter turning radius, big tires, capable off-road, but capable of towing, capable of hauling into the end of the world. Heavier truck is mass times velocity is more energy. I'll be able to plow through broke down vehicles on the freeway better. I'll be able to yank a bus out of a ditch better. Again, I'll have more weight at the same speed as more momentum. So it'll just be a truck that can just do the most. And that is the idea of the build, and I'm excited about it. But yeah, I just wanted to put a video out there to just kind of answer a bunch of the questions that I've been getting asked, and hopefully that answers them. I didn't really write anything down, so hopefully I talked about everything that's worth talking about as it pertains to 450s, 550s, 350s, 250s. So that's that. If you have any questions, ask them down below. If you have more specific questions that I need to update in future videos or do topically in future videos, let me know too, because a lot of the videos I make are a direct response to questions that I get more frequently. So the more questions I see in a comment, the higher likelihood I'll have of doing a video like that or answering that question in a future video. So I always appreciate you commenting. Just log in if you're not logged in and comment for me, for the algorithm, for the support of the channel. Even if it's just to say hey, even if it's just to say I hate Ford, whatever, leaving a comment really helps. I really appreciate it. Share it with your friends. Hit that share button, copy it, text it to yourself, whatever you want to do. That all helps. So I appreciate it. Appreciate you guys. Really excited about this build. Actually, I just got word that my wheels and bumpers and fenders shipped. I already have the tires. So this truck will be taking shape very soon. Sweet. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, take care.